If you had told me I would end up being an English teacher in China, I never would have believed you. Literally, I never would have believed you. Hi, my name is Megan and welcome back to Teacher Talk. This is episode 3 and I wanted to take some time to share a little bit about how I ended up as an English teacher in China, because maybe teaching abroad is something that you have considered. Maybe moving to another country or studying in another country is something that you have considered for yourself. So I have a cup of tea today because it's a little bit chilly. I apologize if you can hear any construction because this is the city that went from a fishing village to 22 million people in 40 years. So there's construction every moment of every day. Honestly, telling this story could be a little bit confusing and I tend to be long-winded. So this is just a chatty video, me telling my story, and I thought I would word it in different questions. So the first question that I often get asked is, did I always want to be a teacher? I am an English teacher at a university here in southern China. Did I always want to be a teacher? No, definitely not. To be honest, it was something that I kept in the back burner as maybe a backup option, but I didn't actually want to be a teacher. When I graduated high school and was looking for a major, I did actually choose education as my major because I was good at school and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I thought education would be a safe choice. Cut to me absolutely hating it. After my first semester of being an English education major, I changed my major because I absolutely hated it. And at that moment, I decided I definitely did not want to be a teacher. God has a sense of humor. I didn't like that we spent so much time on things that felt a little bit unnecessary to me. For example, we spent so much time talking about handwriting and how to organize the classroom and bulletin board displays. And very quickly I realized I would rather learn more about English than learn about how to teach English. In my mind, I thought, surely it's better for me to learn more about English than to learn how to teach it. Not the best thought process. We were young and naive, but I did change my major to just straight English. And at that time, I also realized how much I loved history. So I changed to a double major of straight English and straight history. By the time I graduated, I had added on a political science minor and I was 1 credit short of adding on a writing minor as well. So, am I type A and crazy for having 2 majors and 2 minors in 4 years? Yes, absolutely crazy. And while I don't doubt that I would have enjoyed those careers, I just didn't open my mind up to the type of work I enjoyed doing. Now, when I'm looking back, I see how satisfying and fulfilling and rewarding a teaching career is for me, but I just couldn't see it at the time. Another question I always get asked is, have I always been interested in Asia? Short answer, no. Actually, I would say it was the opposite. I really wasn't that interested in Asia particularly. I was very interested in Europe. I studied a lot of European history for my history degree, but honestly, I just was never one of those people that was really interested in Japanese culture or Korean culture or Chinese culture, or really interested in anime or interested in the cultures of any other countries in Asia. So if you told younger me that I was going to be living in another country, I never could have predicted it would be an Asian country. So how did I end up going to China? When I was still in college, there was a man who visited my university to talk about a semi-exchange program. Basically, college students could come to China for 1 month and they would join in this English camp for college students. And the volunteer teachers from America would just have a chance to learn a little bit more about Chinese culture and kind of interact with people. And it was something I was interested in because I knew I was very interested in world travel. I wasn't specifically interested in China, but I wanted to go everywhere. I went to a meeting and at the meeting, I just decided to go for it. Why not? I was a college student. I had nothing to lose. So I just decided to come to China for 1 month. Now, during that month, I had a really interesting experience because something happened and I ended up in the wrong group. Most of the volunteer teachers from America were all interacting with college students. Somehow, I was put in the group that was teaching teachers. A variety of local Chinese teachers all traveled to this camp to learn more about American style education. Now, everyone who was supposed to be on this team was a little bit more experienced. Hopefully they had graduated with their bachelor's and they were getting their master's, but somehow I ended up in this team. And so instead of just hanging out with college students and having a fun time, I was supposed to actually help these teachers improve their own skill. I had no idea what I was doing. I had never been a teacher. I had 1 semester of education classes, and that was the start of my DIY teacher experience. We won't get into that, but that is how I ended up. I just heard about this organization and I got to come to China for 1 month and test it out. So how did I end up actually coming to China long term? Well, I didn't actually come long term. I decided to take a gap year after I graduated college because I wasn't really sure what company or industry I specifically wanted to work at. And coming to China for that 1 month had made me really interested in seeing the world. So I decided to come to China for 1 gap year. The agency that originally had introduced me to the summer camp helped me set up an interview with a university there in Hainan, China. So I went to the online interview, got the job offer, and decided to move for just 1 year. And I came for that 1 gap year, and my mentality during that time was just to dive in. I wanted to experience as much as I could during that 1 year period. How then did I go from 1 gap year to staying longer? Well, honestly, once it started to get closer to the end of that first year, I just felt like I didn't want to leave. I felt like I was really enjoying my time. I was really communicating with the students. I was becoming a much better teacher. I was still not good, but I was becoming a better teacher. I was really starting to build relationships and build up friendships. And I just thought, 1 more year wouldn't hurt, right? So I was just having so much fun. I decided to stay 1 extra year. And at this time, was I in love with teaching? No. To be honest, I still wasn't very good at it, and I think that was a part of it. I didn't really think about staying in China as teaching in China. I thought of it more as experiencing China. And for me, the decision to stay 1 more year was much less about actually teaching in the classroom, and it was so much more about the experiences I was having outside the classroom, the friendships I was making, the travel I got to have, all the different food I got to try, the history I was learning about. All of that was so stimulating and so exciting to me that I wanted to stay 1 more year. And in my mind, teaching was just the tool that allowed me to easily stay and easily interact with people. That's actually something I love about teaching overseas, because if you just move to a new country, maybe you would find some difficulties getting plugged into the culture. But when you become a teacher, you are handed students who are all eager to talk to you and communicate and to build up relationships with. And so you get to communicate with people and you get to be tapped into the culture really, really easily. One thing I will say that I started to notice was I had a more positive view of teaching in China compared to teaching in America. When I took those education classes in America, it just felt like the focus was so much on these little things, how you arrange your classroom, how to help students get a good score. There's a lot of pressure to do well on standardized tests. But in China, everything felt more practical and useful. I wasn't poring over standardized tests with students. Instead, I was helping students use English. I was communicating with them. I was improving their pronunciation. I was teaching them vocabulary that they needed to know if they wanted to work and use English in their career, or if they wanted to travel and use English, or if they wanted to study abroad. And it just felt more meaningful and more rewarding because I could very easily see the progress and easily see the end goal and see the results that my students were getting from the classes that I had with them. That was just year number 2 though. I've been in China for over 10 years. So how did I go from one gap year to one more year to over a decade? My goodness, that sounds crazy. I actually stayed at that first university for 4 years, which did have some positive benefits. By the end of year number 4, I felt very confident in my abilities as a teacher. I understood the job market a little bit more, and I also had a nice long stint on my resume, which I would later learn helps out so much because so many people travel to China for just a year and then leave. If you have 4 years of consistent work on your resume, you immediately stand out. So after 4 years, I decided that I wanted to try a new place. And I had traveled a little bit around China, and I decided on Shenzhen. I loved the spirit, I loved the energy of this city, and I decided I really wanted to go there. So like I said, I was confident with my abilities, I understood the job market, and I just started applying by myself. I just started reaching out to different schools. I used Google and I found out what schools were available and what schools were hiring. I started sending out my resume, getting feedback and getting interviews. I did end up working at a training center because I was actually considering the idea of maybe opening my own center in the future. Before I really wanted to pursue that goal, I realized I should work at a training center so I could kind of understand the industry from the inside. And I think that was a great decision for me. I really loved working at the training center that I worked at. I worked at Metin English, which is currently out of business, but I learned so much. And I feel like if I were to give advice to someone who wanted to become a teacher abroad, doing it at a training center is actually a really great choice because you're really plugged in at the office with your coworkers and you get to know your Chinese coworkers. You also get to meet a couple of other expats, and it was a really, really great job. I loved it. It was great for 1 year. I didn't want to do it for longer than 1 year. After 1 year, I decided I wanted to go back to university teaching, and again, I did that by myself. I sent out my resumes, I looked up different schools, and I really made my career my own. So I entered the country using agencies that helped me connect with different schools, but after a while I was okay doing it by myself. And honestly, I think I could have also done it by myself from the beginning. So for the last question, over 10 years later, how do I feel about being in China? Like I said at the beginning, I never could have imagined that I would end up as an English teacher in China, but it is something that has so significantly changed my life. I have traveled so much more than I thought was possible, both inside China and outside China. I really got to know Chinese culture. I really got to know Chinese food and Chinese history, and living in another culture is such an amazing opportunity to learn more about yourself, to learn more about your home culture, and really practice expanding your mind. When I look back now at the person who first came to China, I realize how little she knew and how closed-minded she was. And now I'm so much more accepting. I've learned so much more about different cultures. I'm constantly meeting people from other countries and other cultures, not just inside China, but from countries all over the world. And it's given me so many opportunities I didn't know I would have. Now, everything I just said is a lot of outside the classroom things, but I actually love being a teacher. Would I love being a teacher in America? I don't know. I really don't know, but I love teaching English abroad. Like I said, it feels so practical, it feels so useful, and it's very casual in a way. I don't have to focus on standardized tests. Instead, I just get to focus on helping my students in the best way possible. I love that I get to be so incredibly creative. I love that I'm given full control of my classroom. Even though I love teaching now, it is still one of the tools that I use to get the life I want. With my job, I have a long winter break and I have a long summer break, which means I get to travel back home to see my family, or I get to travel to Europe or travel around China. Because I don't work 40 hours a week, I also have time to explore other interests on my own. I've studied Chinese and I've learned more about culture and people, and it has enriched my life so much. So if you are thinking about becoming an ESL teacher or an EFL teacher and you've kind of been on the fence about whether or not you should just do it, honestly, my advice is just go for it. If you go and you don't like it, you can always go back home. And that was my original plan too. I only planned to stay for 1 year and go back home. And then I just extended it one more year and one more year and one more year until I made this my full career. If you don't like it, you can just go back home. But even if I went home after 1 year, I think the lessons and the experiences and the memories I made after that 1 year would have definitely been worth it. So if there's anything that you are interested in knowing about becoming an ESL teacher or an EFL teacher, you can always leave a question below in the comments. I'd be glad to answer any other questions for you. You can also check out atlasteachingesl.com, where I have tons of tips about how to be a better teacher, but also how to do well in interviews and how to find a job and how to land a job and what red flags to look out for. If there's anything that you would want me to make a video about, you can also leave that in the comments down below. If you had told me I was going to be an EFL teacher in China, I never would have believed you, but looking back, it's honestly one of the best decisions I ever made. I'm really happy in my career, and it's given me the life that I dreamed about. Life with flexibility and freedom and the ability to travel and the ability to interact with new people and constantly be learning. I have talked for a very long time. My tea is getting a little bit cold. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. But I just wanted to share a little bit about how I went from living in America to becoming an EFL teacher at a university in China. That's all for today. If you have anything more that you'd like to see, definitely let me know. I'll see you next time. Bye.